The morning sun rose over New Eden, painting the sky in soft colors of pink and gold. Captain Lee Donghyun stood on the observation deck of the colony's main building, watching the peaceful farmland stretch to the horizon. Children ran through the fields, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. This was why humans had come so far from Earth, to build a better life among the stars. New Eden was everything the colonists had dreamed of when they left Earth 5 years ago. The soil was rich and perfect for growing food. The weather was mild all year round. Clean rivers flowed through green valleys where families had built their homes. 50,000 humans now called this world home, living in harmony with nature and each other. "Captain Lee," called a young voice. He turned to see Kim Hyunwoo running up the stairs, his school bag bouncing on his back. The 8-year-old boy had bright eyes and a smile that could light up any room. His father was the colony's chief engineer, and Hyunwoo often visited the command center after school. "Hello, Hyunwoo," Captain Lee said, kneeling down to the boy's level. "How was school today?" "Great. Mrs. Park taught us about the stars and how our parents traveled so far to get here. She said we might meet aliens someday. Do you think that's true, Captain?" Before Lee could answer, his communication device beeped. His assistant's voice came through clearly. "Captain, we have incoming ships. They're not human." Lee's heart jumped, but he kept his voice calm for Hyunwoo. "That's very exciting news. Why don't you go find your father? I think you'll want to hear about this." Hyunwoo's eyes went wide with wonder. "Real aliens? This is the best day ever." He ran off toward the engineering section, practically bouncing with excitement. Captain Lee hurried to the command center where his team was already tracking the approaching vessels. Dr. Park Ji-won, the colony's chief medical officer, stood beside the main display screen. She was a calm woman who had helped deliver many of the colony's children, including Hyunwoo's younger sister. "What do we know?" Lee asked. "3 ships, Captain," reported Lieutenant Yoon Seungmin, the colony's administrator. "They're using a communication frequency we've never seen before, but our computers are starting to understand their language. They're asking permission to land. Are they armed? We can't tell for sure, but they're not pointing any weapons at us. They seem peaceful." Dr. Park looked worried. "Should we contact Earth?" "This is first contact with a new species." Captain Lee thought for a moment. Earth was 6 months away by the fastest ship. If these aliens meant harm, help would come too late. If they were peaceful, this could be the beginning of something wonderful for humanity. "Let's talk to them first," he decided. "Open a channel." The main screen flickered and then showed the face of something definitely not human. The alien had a long, narrow head with large black eyes. Its skin looked smooth and gray, almost like metal. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into English. "Greetings, humans of New Eden. I am Ambassador Thekvar of the Valen Republic. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade between our peoples." Captain Lee stepped forward. "Welcome, Ambassador Thekvar. I am Captain Lee Donghyun, commander of this colony. We are honored by your visit." "Your world is beautiful," the alien said, its head tilting in what might have been curiosity. "We have studied your people from a distance and are impressed by your peaceful nature. We would like to land and meet with you in person if you permit." "Of course. We'll prepare a landing area for you." Within hours, the alien ships had landed in the colony's main plaza. A crowd gathered to watch as the Valens emerged from their vessels. They were tall, almost 7 feet high, with long, thin arms and legs. They moved gracefully, almost like they were dancing. Their leader, Ambassador Thekvar, wore what looked like ceremonial robes that shimmered in the sunlight. The children were fascinated. Choi Minji, a brave 10-year-old girl whose parents ran the colony's largest farm, pushed to the front of the crowd. "They're so tall," she whispered to her friend. "And their eyes are so big," Hyunwoo whispered back. "I wonder if they can see really far." Ambassador Thekvar approached Captain Lee with what seemed like a smile, though it was hard to tell on such an alien face. "Captain Lee, thank you for welcoming us. We bring gifts from our world and hope to learn about yours." The Valens had brought amazing technology. They showed the colonists devices that could heal cuts instantly, machines that could grow food twice as fast, and tools that made hard work much easier. In return, they seemed interested in everything about human culture, their music, their art, their stories. "You have such a young species," Ambassador Thekvar told Dr. Park during a tour of the medical center. "Your children are so full of energy and life. They must be very precious to you." They are our future, Dr. Park replied proudly. Every child here represents hope for what humanity can become. The ambassador's large black eyes seemed to focus more intently. Yes, I can see that. Their minds must be so fresh and pure. Quite remarkable. Over the next few days, the Valens set up a temporary camp near the colony. They claimed they needed to repair their ships before continuing their journey, but they seemed in no hurry to leave. The colonists didn't mind. The aliens were polite, helpful, and fascinating to talk to. The children especially were drawn to the visitors. Hyunwoo and Minji often sat near the Valen camp after school, watching the aliens work on their strange machines. The Valens seemed to enjoy the attention, often demonstrating their technology for the young audience. Human children are quite different from Valen young, one of the aliens told Minji. Your minds work in such interesting ways. So creative, so tender. Minji beamed with pride. My mom says kids think differently because we haven't learned to be afraid of new ideas yet. Wise words, the alien said, its voice almost purring. Fear does change how one thinks, doesn't it? Captain Lee felt mostly positive about the contact, though something nagged at him. The Valens asked many questions about the colony's defenses, its communication systems, and especially about the children's routines. When they went to school, where they played, when they slept. They're just curious, Dr. Park assured him when he mentioned his concerns. Think about it. If we visited an alien world, we'd want to know everything too. Yoon Sungmin agreed. They've been nothing but helpful, Captain. Look at what they've taught us about hydroponics. Our food production has already increased by 30%. Still, Lee found himself checking the security reports more often. He increased patrols around the residential areas, especially near the schools and playgrounds. He told himself he was just being careful, but the feeling that something wasn't quite right wouldn't go away. 3 weeks after the Valens arrived, that feeling proved to be terribly correct. It started with Kim Hyunwoo. His father found the boy's bed empty one morning, the window open, no sign of struggle. The security cameras showed nothing. They had mysteriously stopped working during the night. He probably just went exploring, his mother said, though her voice shook with worry. You know how curious he is about the aliens. But when the sun set and Hyunwoo still hadn't returned, the colony began to panic. Search teams spread across New Eden calling his name, checking every building and field. The Valens offered to help, claiming their sensors were more advanced than human equipment. Captain Lee accepted their help, but part of him wondered why their sensors hadn't detected a missing child before the humans even asked. The search for Hyunwoo continued through the night. Captain Lee stood in the command center, watching search teams move across the colony like fireflies in the darkness. Every parent in New Eden was awake, holding their own children a little closer. Any word from the teams? Dr. Park asked as she entered the room. Her medical bag was slung over her shoulder. She had been ready to treat Hyunwoo the moment he was found. Nothing yet, Lee replied, his voice tight with worry. It's like he just disappeared. Lieutenant Yoon Sungmin looked up from his computer. Captain, I've been checking our security systems. The cameras around the residential area all went offline at exactly 2:17 a.m. That's too organized to be a coincidence. Before Lee could respond, his radio crackled. Captain, this is Search Team 5. We found something. What is it? Strange marks in the dirt near the playground. They don't look human. Lee's blood went cold. I'm on my way. At the playground, the search team leader showed Lee deep impressions in the soft earth. The marks were long and narrow, like someone had dragged heavy claws through the dirt. They led from the playground toward the woods, then simply stopped. It's like whatever made these just flew away, the team leader said. Dr. Park knelt beside the marks, studying them carefully. She pulled out a small device that could analyze biological traces. After a moment, it beeped. Captain, she said quietly, this device is picking up genetic material that isn't human. It's definitely alien. Lee felt his worst fears beginning to come true. Valen? I can't be sure without comparing it to their samples, but... She looked up at him with worried eyes. Yes, I think so. Could Hyunwoo have been hurt? Could they have been trying to help him? Dr. Park's expression grew grim. Captain, these marks suggest something was dragged. And there are traces of human DNA mixed with the alien material. Lee's radio buzzed again. Captain, we have another problem. Choi Minji is missing too. The second disappearance sent panic through the colony. Minji's parents had checked on her at midnight. She was sleeping peacefully in her bed. At dawn she was gone. Her bedroom window was open, and the same strange claw marks were found in the flower garden below. By noon, 6 more children had vanished, all between the ages of 7 and 11, all taken from their beds during the night, all leaving behind the same alien traces. Captain Lee called an emergency meeting with Ambassador Thekvar. The alien leader arrived at the command center with 2 of his assistants, moving with that same graceful walk that had once seemed elegant but now felt predatory. "Ambassador," Lee began, fighting to keep his voice steady, "we have a serious problem. 8 of our children have disappeared, and we've found Valen genetic material at every site." The ambassador's large black eyes seemed to widen slightly. "That is most disturbing news, Captain. Are you suggesting my people are involved? I'm asking for your help to find out what happened." "Of course. We will examine our records immediately. Perhaps one of our survey teams encountered your children and tried to help them." Something in the alien's tone made Lee's skin crawl, but he nodded. "Thank you. Time is critical here." The Valens left, promising to return within hours with information. But as evening approached, they sent word that their investigation was taking longer than expected. They asked for more time. That night, 4 more children disappeared. Dr. Park worked through the night analyzing every trace of alien material they had found. Her test revealed something that made her hands shake as she called Captain Lee. "You need to come to the medical center immediately," she said, "and bring Yoon. You both need to see this." In her laboratory, Dr. Park showed them microscopic images on her computer screen. "The Valen genetic material we found isn't from their skin or hair," she explained. "It's from their saliva." "Saliva?" Yoon asked. "Yes, and there's more. I found traces of human neural tissue mixed with it." Lee felt sick. "What does that mean?" "It means the Valens didn't just touch our children, Captain. They bit them. And somehow they extracted neural material." The room fell silent except for the hum of medical equipment. Finally, Lee spoke. "Are you saying they're eating them?" "I don't know. But whatever they're doing, it involves removing parts of the children's brains while they're still alive." Before anyone could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the colony. Lee's radio burst to life with urgent voices. "Captain, the Valen ships are powering up. All 3 vessels are preparing to launch." "Sir, we're detecting movement in their camp. They're packing up everything." Lee ran to the command center with Dr. Park and Yoon close behind. On the main screen, they could see the Valen ships glowing with energy. Aliens were quickly loading equipment and supplies. "Open a channel to Ambassador Thekvar," Lee ordered. The alien's face appeared on screen, but now his expression was completely different. The polite mask was gone, replaced by something cold and hungry. "Captain Lee," the ambassador said with what might have been amusement, "I apologize for the sudden departure, but our mission here is complete." "What mission?" "Where are our children?" The alien's head tilted. "Your children? Oh, you mean our harvest. They are safe aboard our ships, Captain. Well, most of them are still alive anyway." The words hit Lee like physical blows. "Harvest? Did you really think we came here for friendship?" Tekvar's voice carried a cruel laugh. "Humans are such a naive species. Your children have the most delicious neural chemistry we have encountered in centuries. So pure, so untainted by adult fears and doubts." On the screen behind the ambassador, Lee could see movement. Small figures in what looked like glass containers. Children. His children. "The young ones will provide sustenance for our people for months," Tekvar continued. "We keep them alive, of course. Fresh neural fluid is so much more flavorful than preserved." Dr. Park grabbed Lee's arm. "Captain, look at Container 7. That's Hyunwoo." Lee looked and saw the boy he had spoken with just days ago. Hyunwoo was pale and weak, lying in a clear tube filled with some kind of liquid. "Thin cables were attached to his head, you monster," Lee whispered. "Monster?" The ambassador seemed genuinely puzzled. "We are simply higher on the food chain, Captain. Do you call yourself a monster for eating lower animals? Your children are resources, nothing more. Wait, bring them back now." "I think not. In fact, we will return in a few months for more. Your colony breeds quite efficiently. We estimate we can harvest 12 children every season without significantly impacting your population." Rage built in Lee's chest like a fire. "You will return our children or what?" Thekvar cut him off. "You have no weapons that can harm our ships. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Face reality, Captain. You are cattle, and cattle do not make demands of their farmers. The transmission ended. On the screen, they watched the 3 Valen ships rise into the sky and disappear among the stars, taking 12 human children with them. In the silence that followed, Yoon spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Captain Lee stared at the empty sky where the ships had vanished. When he spoke, his voice was harder than steel. "We call for help, and then we make them pay." Captain Lee stood before the colony's main communication array, his hands shaking as he prepared to send the most important message of his life. Dr. Park and Yoon stood beside him, their faces pale but determined. Every parent in New Eden had gathered in the plaza below waiting for word about their children. "Are you sure about the wording?" Dr. Park asked quietly. Lee looked at the message he had written. It was short, but it carried the weight of absolute horror. "Emergency. Priority Alpha. Alien species called Valens have taken 12 of our children. They are torturing them for neural fluid while keeping them alive. Request immediate military response. They promise to return for more. This is not a raid, this is systematic harvesting of human children. Please help us, it's the truth," Lee said. "Earth needs to know exactly what we're facing." He pressed the transmission button. The message shot into space, racing toward Earth at faster than light speed. It would reach Earth Defense Command in 18 hours. "Now we wait," Yoon said. "No," Lee replied, his voice growing harder. "Now we prepare. If they come back before help arrives, we need to be ready to fight." The next 18 hours felt like 18 years. Parents took turns keeping watch from the colony's highest towers. Children who remained were moved to the most secure buildings and never left alone. The adults tried to stay calm, but everyone could feel the fear growing like a disease. Finally, Lee's communication system buzzed with an incoming transmission from Earth. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Admiral Kang Tae-hyung, commander of Earth Defense. The admiral was a man in his 50s with gray hair and stern eyes that had seen many battles. "Captain Lee, I've read your report. Are you absolutely certain about what you witnessed?" "Yes, sir." The Valen ambassador admitted everything. "We saw our children in their ships." The admiral's expression darkened. "I have a daughter, Captain. She's 9 years old. If someone took her—" He paused, collecting himself. "I'm mobilizing everything we have. Fleet Admiral Oh Jin-wook will lead the response with the 7th Assault Fleet. How long until they arrive?" 3 weeks minimum. "Can you hold out that long?" "We'll have to, sir." Admiral Kang leaned forward. "Captain, I want you to understand something. This message you sent, it's already been shared with every human world. The response is going to be unlike anything the galaxy has seen." Lee felt a spark of hope. "Sir?" President Song Na-young addressed the human nations an hour ago. She declared the Valen actions an act of war against all humanity. Every world is contributing ships and soldiers. We're not just sending a rescue mission, Captain. We're sending an army. The transmission ended, but within hours more messages began arriving. Ships from colony worlds Lee had never heard of were joining the fleet. Military units that hadn't fought together in decades were volunteering for the mission. Even civilian vessels were being converted to warships. But the message that affected Lee most came from his old friend Colonel Shin Woo-jin, commander of the elite Wraith Squadron Special Forces. "Dong-yun," the colonel said, using Lee's first name as he had when they served together years ago. "I've seen the footage. My team is already aboard Admiral Oh's flagship. We specialize in rescue operations, and I promise you this: we will bring your children home." As word spread through human space, something unprecedented began to happen. The species that prided itself on being peaceful and diplomatic was transforming into something else entirely. The images of children in Valen containers had awakened something primal in humanity, the protective fury of parents whose young had been threatened. Dr. Park monitored news feeds from across human space. "Captain, you need to see this," she called. On her screen was a video from Earth. Millions of people filled the streets of major cities, holding pictures of the missing children. The crowds chanted in dozens of languages, but the message was the same: bring them home. "Look at this," she said, switching to another feed. "This is from New Shanghai Colony. They've converted their entire merchant fleet to support ships. Over here, the Mars shipyards are working around the clock to build weapons. And this is from the Outer Rim worlds." The image showed rough frontier colonists loading supplies onto ships. These were people who had fled to the very edge of human space to escape civilization. But even they were joining the cause. They're all coming, Dr. Park whispered in amazement. Lee felt something he hadn't experienced since the children were taken. Hope. How many ships total? The reports are still coming in, but it looks like over 500 vessels. This is the largest human fleet ever assembled. President Song Nayoung's second address reached New Eden that evening. The president was a woman who had built her career on diplomacy and peaceful solutions. But her words now carried the weight of absolute determination. Citizens of humanity, she began. 3 weeks ago, we encountered a species that committed the one unforgivable act. They took our children. They tortured them. They promised to take more. The president's voice grew stronger. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be no half measures. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human citizen stands united in this cause. We will rescue our children, and we will ensure this never happens again. As the president spoke, Lee received a private message from Admiral Oh Jinwook, the fleet commander. The admiral was known throughout human space as a careful, methodical leader who never acted without considering all options. Captain Lee, the admiral said, I want you to know that this mission has changed me. I've spent my career trying to avoid war, trying to find peaceful solutions to every conflict. But when I saw those images of children in alien containers, the admiral's voice hardened. Some things cannot be forgiven. Some lines cannot be crossed. The Valens will learn this lesson, even if we have to burn their entire civilization to teach it. The message that followed came from General Bae Suk-young of the Human Liberation Corps. The general was a legend, a woman, who had led humanity's most difficult ground operations for 20 years. Captain, my forces specialize in liberating prisoners from hostile territory. I've studied the Valen ship designs you transmitted. My people are already planning the assault. Those children will be free within a month, I promise you that. Each message strengthened Lee's resolve, but it was the last transmission that surprised him most. It came from Ambassador Chen Mira, Earth's chief diplomatic officer and the person responsible for making contact with alien species. Captain Lee, she said, I have devoted my life to building peaceful relationships with alien civilizations. I believed that all intelligent species could find common ground, that violence was never the only answer. The Valens have proven me wrong. As of today, I am resigning my position to join the rescue fleet as a volunteer. Some things are more important than diplomacy. As reports continued to pour in, Lee realized that the Valens had made a critical error. They had assumed that humanity's peaceful nature meant they were weak. They thought that taking a few children from a remote colony would be a minor loss that humans would accept. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in human nature since their ancestors first learned to protect their young on ancient Earth. They had triggered the one response that could unite every human world, every human ship, every human soldier into a single, focused purpose. Dr. Park showed Lee one final message. It came from a 9-year-old boy named Nam Jae-hoon, whose family lived in the colony's eastern district. Captain Lee, the boy said in a shaky voice, I escaped from the alien ship. I hid in a storage compartment when they took us. I saw what they did to Hyunwoo and Minji and the others. I saw the machines they use. I can tell your soldiers where the children are kept and how to get to them. Lee stared at the message, hardly believing what he was hearing. Get me that boy immediately, he ordered. Within an hour, Ji-hoon was in the command center with his worried parents. The boy was pale and thin, but his eyes burned with determination that seemed far too old for his young face. Tell me everything, Lee said gently. Ji-hoon's story was horrifying, but it also gave them exactly what they needed. Detailed information about Valen ship layouts, security systems, and most importantly, the location where the children were being held. There are other alien species on their ships too, Ji-hoon said. Children from other worlds. The Valens have been doing this for a long time. Lee felt his anger grow even hotter. The Valens weren't just humanity's enemy. They were predators who had been terrorizing the galaxy for years. Thank you, Ji-hoon, Lee said. You're very brave. This information will help us save your friends. As he prepared to transmit Ji-hoon's intelligence to the approaching fleet, Lee allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in weeks. Certainty. The Valens had made their choice when they took human children. Now humanity would show them the consequences of that choice. The rescue was coming, and it would be terrible and final. 3 weeks after the children disappeared, the largest fleet in human history dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of New Eden's solar system. Captain Lee watched from the colony's observation deck as hundreds of ships appeared like stars suddenly blazing to life in the darkness. "Captain," Yoon called from the communication center, "Admiral O is requesting to speak with you." Lee hurried inside, where the main screen showed the bridge of the flagship. Admiral O Jinwook looked like a man who had not slept in weeks, but his eyes burned with focused determination. "Captain Lee," the admiral said, "we've received the intelligence from young Ji-hoon. My tactical team has spent the journey here studying every detail. We know where the Valens have taken our children." "Where, sir?" "A processing facility in the Kepler 442 system, about 6 days from here. Our scouts report at least 50 Valen ships protecting it. Plus, the facility itself has heavy defenses. But Captain," the admiral's voice grew harder, "we also detected other ships. Hundreds of them. The Valens have been harvesting children from across the galaxy for decades." Lee felt sick thinking about how many families had suffered as his colony was suffering now. "What's our plan?" "Total assault. We're not trying to capture territory or negotiate surrender. We're going in to rescue every child we can find and eliminate the Valens' ability to do this ever again." The screen split to show another face. Colonel Shin Woojin of the Wraith Squadron. Lee's old friend looked grimmer than he had ever seen him. "Dong-yun," the colonel said, "my team has practiced the rescue operation 100 times using the ship layouts Ji-hoon provided. We'll get them out." "What about resistance?" Admiral O answered. "Intelligence suggests the Valens still don't understand what they're facing. Their communications indicate they view this as a minor territorial dispute. They've prepared for a small human force, not what we're actually bringing." "How many ships do we have?" 537 combat vessels, plus 200 support ships. Over 100,000 soldiers from every human world. "Captain, this is more than a rescue mission. This is humanity making a statement that some lines cannot be crossed." The fleet spent 2 days at New Eden, taking on supplies and final intelligence. Lee watched as ship after ship landed to collect food, water, and medical supplies that the colonists freely provided. Every person in New Eden wanted to contribute to bringing their children home. Dr. Park worked with the fleet medical teams, providing detailed information about each missing child's health needs. "Hyunwoo has a mild allergy to certain medications," she explained. "Minji will need psychological support. She's very sensitive. All of them will need careful handling after what they've been through." "Doctor," said Fleet Medical Officer Commander Park Jun-soo, "we have trauma specialists from every major human hospital. These children will receive the best care humanity can provide." On the morning of departure, Captain Lee stood with young Ji-hoon and his parents as the boy recorded a message for the fleet. "My name is Nam Ji-hoon," the boy said, his voice steady despite his young age. "I escaped from the aliens who took my friends. I know where they are keeping them. I know how the alien ships work. Please bring them home. Tell Hyunwoo and Minji that I'm okay and that help is coming." Admiral O transmitted the message to every ship in the fleet. Within hours, Lee received reports that it had been played in mess halls, briefing rooms, and command centers across the entire armada. The image of a 9-year-old boy giving intelligence to help save his friends became a symbol that strengthened every human soldier's resolve. The fleet departed New Eden in a formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. Lee remained in the colony's command center, monitoring communications and waiting for news. 6 days later, the battle began. "All ships, this is Admiral O," came the voice over the communication system. "We have arrived at the target system. Valen forces are moving to intercept. All units, you are cleared to engage." Lee listened as the battle unfolded across space. The Valens had indeed prepared for a minor skirmish, positioning about 50 ships to defend their facility. They were not prepared for the wall of human vessels that emerged from faster-than-light travel. "Contact. Contact. Valen ships opening fire. Blue Squadron engaging enemy formation Alpha. This is Captain Kim Taewon of the Destroyer Soul. We have multiple enemy hits. Weapons are ineffective against our shields. Red Wing, press the attack. Don't let them retreat." The space battle was unlike anything in human history. The Valens fought with advanced technology, but they were outnumbered 10-1 by humans who fought with the fury of parents seeking their children. "Admiral, this is Captain Yang Jisoo of the cruiser Busan. Enemy resistance is collapsing. They're trying to withdraw to the facility." "Negative, Captain. No Valen ship leaves this system. Hunt them down. As the fleet destroyed the defending ships, Colonel Shin's special forces began their assault on the processing facility itself. Lee listened as the colonel's calm voice directed the most important operation of his career. Wraith 1 to all teams. We are go for facility assault. Remember, our priority is the children. Everything else is secondary. Wraith 3, we've breached the outer hull. Proceeding to detention level. Wraith 7, we have visual on the holding area. I count. My God, there are hundreds of containers here. Lee's heart raced. Colonel, do you see our children? Still searching, Captain. The facility is massive. Wait. Wraith 2, what's your status? Colonel, we found them. Section C, Level 7. All 12 of our kids are here. They're alive, but they need immediate medical attention. Lee felt tears on his face for the first time since the children had been taken. Are they okay? Can you get them out? Dr. Park's medical information was perfect, Captain. We know exactly what each child needs. Medics are already working on them. The rescue continued for hours. As Colonel Shin's teams moved through the facility, they discovered the true scope of the Valen operation. Children from dozens of species were being held in the complex, some for months or even years. Admiral O to Captain Lee, came the voice from the flagship. We've secured the facility. Initial count shows over 300 children rescued, including all 12 of yours. But Captain, what we found here is worse than we imagined. How so? This wasn't just a processing center. It was a research facility. The Valens were experimenting on these children, trying to develop more efficient harvesting methods. We found records indicating they've destroyed entire worlds after harvesting all the children. Lee felt his anger burn even hotter. What about the Valens responsible? Most of the facility staff fought to the death rather than surrender. We've captured about 30 for questioning. Admiral Kang wants them brought back to Earth for trial. Over the next several hours, reports continued to flow back to New Eden. The human fleet had not only rescued the children, but had also captured Valen technology, ship designs, and most importantly, the locations of other facilities. Captain, Admiral O reported, we've identified 6 more processing centers in Valen space. President Song has authorized expanded operations. We're not stopping until every child is free and every facility is destroyed. Dr. Park monitored the medical reports about their rescued children. Hyunwoo is weak but stable, she told Lee. Minji is responding well to treatment. All of them are asking about home. When will they return? The fleet medical ship will bring them back to New Eden in 3 days. But Captain, Dr. Park's voice grew concerned. The psychological trauma is severe. These children have been through horrors that no child should ever experience. Recovery will take time, Lee nodded. Whatever they need, they'll have it. The most important news came from General Bae Suk-young, who had led the ground assault on the facility. Captain Lee, the general, reported, we recovered data from the Valen computers. This species has been harvesting children for over 2 centuries. They've destroyed dozens of civilizations, but their records also show something else. They never expected resistance like this. They viewed all other species as livestock. And now they know they were wrong. We captured their military commander alive. He keeps asking how a cattle species could defeat their technology. He doesn't understand that he made the one mistake no species should ever make. He threatened our children. As the fleet began its journey back to New Eden, Lee received a final message from Admiral O. Captain, I want you to know that this operation has changed how humanity will interact with the galaxy. We've learned that there are species out there who view others as resources to be harvested. We won't let our guard down again. What happens next? Next, we make sure every species in the galaxy understands what happens when someone hurts human children. The Valen government has been dissolved. Their military is being dismantled. Any survivors will be relocated to worlds where they can be monitored. Lee looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, human ships were carrying rescued children home to their families. And if other species try what the Valens did? Admiral O's voice carried a promise that made Lee's heart fill with fierce pride. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Valens learned, Captain. You can fight humanity. You can compete with humanity. You can even defeat humanity in battle. But you never ever harm human children and expect to survive the consequences. 3 days after the rescue, Captain Lee stood in New Eden's medical center, watching Dr. Park examine Hyunwoo. The boy was awake but quiet, his bright smile replaced by careful, watchful eyes. The machines that had tortured him were gone, but the memory remained. "How do you feel?" Dr. Park asked gently. "Tired," Hyunwoo said in a small voice. "But better. Is my dad here?" "He's waiting outside. He hasn't left the building since you came back." Lee watched through the window as families were reunited with their children. Minji clung to her parents, crying quietly. Other children sat close to their families, needing the comfort of familiar faces. The Valen containers were gone, but healing would take much longer than rescue. "Captain," called Yoon from the communication center. "Admiral O is requesting a conference call, all senior staff." In the command center, the main screen showed not just Admiral O, but also President Song Na-young, Admiral Kang, General Bae, and Colonel Shin. Lee had never seen so many high-ranking officials on one call. "Captain Lee," President Song began, "first let me say that every human world celebrates the return of your children, but we need to discuss what happens next." "Ma'am?" "The Valen homeworld has surrendered unconditionally. Their government has been dissolved and their military fleets have been destroyed. But the question remains. What do we do with the survivors?" Admiral O leaned forward. "Captain, we've rescued over 800 children from 6 different facilities. Some had been held for years. The scope of Valen crimes goes far beyond what happened to New Eden." General Bae spoke next. "We captured detailed records of their operations. They've harvested children from 47 different worlds over the past 2 centuries. Most of those civilizations are now extinct. The Valens took so many children that the species couldn't recover." Lee felt sick. How many children total? Based on their records, over 50,000 over the past 100 years alone. Colonel Shin said grimly. "Captain, what the Valens did to your colony was just their latest harvest. They viewed it as routine." President Song's expression was harder than steel. "Which brings us to the decision we need to make. The surviving Valens, about 2 million of them, are requesting mercy. They claim they were just following their nature, that they didn't understand other species were truly intelligent." "What does that mean for justice?" Lee asked. Admiral Kang answered. "We have several options. We could relocate them to a single world under permanent human supervision. We could scatter them across the galaxy in small groups, or..." He paused. "We could ensure they never threaten anyone again." Lee understood what the Admiral wasn't saying directly. "You're asking if we should execute them all." "The decision isn't ours alone," President Song said. "Representatives from every world that lost children are voting. But we wanted your opinion, Captain. New Eden was their most recent victim." Lee thought about Hyunwoo's frightened eyes, about Minji's quiet tears, about all the children who would need years to heal from their trauma. He thought about the 50,000 children who would never come home because the Valens had killed them. "What does Ambassador Thekvar say about this?" Lee asked. Colonel Shin's expression darkened. "We captured him alive during the final assault. He's being held on Earth for questioning. His response to learning about human capabilities has been enlightening." "How so?" "He keeps asking how a cattle species developed such advanced military technology. He can't understand that we were holding back during first contact, trying to be peaceful. He thought our colonies were defenseless because we chose not to have large military forces, not because we couldn't build them." Admiral O added, "The interrogations have revealed something important. The Valens studied dozens of species before attacking them. They specifically chose victims who appeared peaceful and non-aggressive. They thought humanity fit that pattern." "They were wrong," Lee said. "Completely wrong. What they saw as weakness was actually restraint. What they interpreted as helplessness was actually choice. We didn't have large military forces because we didn't think we needed them, not because we couldn't build them." President Song leaned forward. "Captain, the galaxy is watching how we handle this situation. Other species need to understand that there are consequences for harming human children. Some are calling for total justice, complete elimination of the Valen species. Others argue for mercy." Lee looked out the window at the playground where Hyunwoo and Minji used to play before the Valens came. Children were playing there again, but now their parents watched constantly, and security guards stood at every entrance. "Ma'am, I think there's a middle path. Lee said finally. Explain. Total execution would make us like them, treating an entire species as disposable. But simply relocating them somewhere else just moves the problem. Other worlds' children would still be at risk. What do you suggest? Lee had been thinking about this since the rescue. Permanent containment. Put all surviving Valens on a single world with enough resources to live, but under absolute human supervision. Remove their technology. Monitor every aspect of their society. Make it impossible for them to ever harm children again, but don't kill them unless they try to escape or cause harm. General Bay nodded slowly. A prison world, essentially. Yes, but not a death camp. They can live, work, have families. But they can never leave, and they can never access technology that could be used to harm others. Make them a permanent reminder to the galaxy of what happens when you harm human children. Colonel Shin seemed to consider this. It would require significant resources to maintain such a facility. I volunteer New Eden to help, Lee said. Our people will never forget what the Valens did. We'll take turns providing guards and supervisors. It should be humans who watch them. Humans whose children they tried to harvest. President Song smiled for the first time in the conversation. That's remarkably merciful, Captain, considering what they did to your people. It's not mercy, ma'am, it's justice. Killing them all would be revenge. This is justice. They lose their freedom and their ability to harm others, but they keep their lives. And every day they'll be reminded that the cattle species they tried to harvest is the species that now controls their entire existence. The vote, when it came, supported Lee's proposal. The surviving Valens would be relocated to a single world, designated as Penal Colony Valen 1, under permanent human supervision. They would have no technology beyond basic agriculture and medicine. They would never be allowed to leave. And they would be constantly reminded that their situation was the direct result of their choice to harm human children. Ambassador Thekvar was brought to New Eden before the relocation began. Lee insisted on speaking with him personally. The former ambassador was no longer the elegant, graceful being who had first visited the colony. Prison had made him smaller, more hunched. His large black eyes no longer held arrogance, only confusion and fear. You wanted to see me, Captain? Thekvar asked in the human language he had learned so well. I wanted you to see something, Lee replied. He led the alien to the observation deck overlooking the colony. Below them, children played in the rebuilt playground. Hyunwoo was there, still quiet but slowly returning to his old cheerful self. Minji was teaching younger children a new game. The security guards were still present, but the children were laughing again. Do you see them? Lee asked. I see you're young, Thekvar replied carefully. Those are the children you called resources, the ones you thought were just cattle to be harvested. Thekvar said nothing. They're healing, Lee continued. It will take time, but they'll recover from what you did to them. They'll grow up strong and smart and free. And do you know what the greatest irony is? What? If you had come here peacefully, really peacefully, they would have welcomed you. Human children love meeting new people, learning new things. They would have been excited to be your friends. You could have had their friendship freely, but instead you chose to try to consume them. Thekvar's voice was barely a whisper. We did not know they were truly intelligent. You didn't want to know. You studied us for months. You saw how we cared for our children, how we protected them, how we loved them. You just didn't care because it was easier to think of us as animals. Lee turned to face the alien directly. You're going to spend the rest of your life on a world where humans decide what you can do, what you can eat, where you can go. Every day. You'll remember that the species you tried to harvest is the species that now owns you completely. Will you kill us if we resist? We'll stop you if you try to escape or hurt anyone, but we won't kill you just for existing. We're not like you. We don't treat other species as disposable. Thekvar looked confused. Then why do this at all? Why not simply destroy us? Lee smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Because this is worse for you than death, isn't it? Death would be quick. This way you live every day knowing that you lost. That the cattle species you tried to farm is the species that now farms you. 3 months later, Lee stood in the same spot, watching a transport ship carry the last group of Valens to their new prison world. The colony was fully rebuilt, stronger than before. New defensive systems protected every building. Elite human marines were stationed permanently on Nu.